Good morning and welcome back. The sun coming up on New York City right now, getting ready to memorialize the day that impacted that city and the country for the past 20 years and counting. The sun also coming up here in Buffalo, where we are doing our own remembering of September 11th. This sea of flags on the lawn in front of Kleinhans, leading up to the reflecting pool behind me. And we can come to sites like these. We can sit here, we can reflect. But there's no better way to remember what happened that tragic day than to hear the stories from there passed on. A group of firefighters and police officers from the city of Buffalo suited up when they heard the news of what happened in New York City to give any help that they could. 20 years later, I sat down with those men to hear firsthand how they remember this day.
I turned on the TV just before the second plane hit the towers.
When I was looking at that, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. You want to do something. You just don't want to sit.
And a group of us got together and said, listen, let's go.
In the aftermath of 9/11, firefighters and police officers from Buffalo couldn't get to New York City fast enough. They suited up, prepared to help however they could at Ground Zero.
I remember walking into that scene. It was like Mars. It was surreal, quiet. I just could not believe what I was looking at.
It was quiet. There wasn't a whole lot of talking going on.
One of the buildings was still free burning. That they weren't even putting water on it. It was just there on fire.
Some chief said, I want everybody in this area to follow me, and we happened to be in that area. And the next thing you know, we're on the pile helping out. And within 15 minutes, we were working on the first body that we were recovering.
They dug for hours on their hands and knees, passing buckets of rubble down a line of first responders. At one point, they thought they'd be forced to stop.
There was an iron worker that would cut all steel that was in our way, and then we can continue on. And the iron worker that was working with us said, listen, I've been here 24 hours, I gotta go home and sleep, drop his tools. And the chief said, well, I guess we're done. And Mike Biasillo, who was the captain of Ladder 4 at the time, picked up the torch and said, Chief, what do you need cut? And because of that, we were able to continue working throughout that night.
These guys were all trained in that stuff. I wasn't, but they were. And they just picked up the equipment. Picked up some of the equipment, some saws and jaws of whatever, and they knew how to do it, and it kept us working through that night.
Day after day, they'd trek back to Ground Zero.
There were people on our way in, before they put up the fences and everything, that were begging you to find their family member.
They give you pictures.
And give you pictures, and crying, and holding on to you, and just begging, please find them. And we weren't finding anybody. And that's hard. And you want to find, that's what we are trained to do, police and fire. We're trained to help people.
I didn't feel like we were really accomplishing anything because we didn't save a life. That's what we do. But as years went by, I realized that what we did is we lifted their spirits. They saw brother police and firemen that they didn't know who we were. They just knew we were from Buffalo, and we were there holding their spirit up.
That helping spirit carried on decades later by the next generation.
I had a newborn son at home, and I had another son that was 6 years old. And he had actually seen the World Trade Centers because we came to New York for a Yankees game. So he's one of the few people in his generation that actually seen the towers. And he recently was part of the evacuation mission in Kabul with the Air Force. And I'm proud of him. And he had called me from there and said, you know, Dad, you started this and I'm finishing it. We're doing the bookends.
So powerful when you hear their stories. We sat there and we talked for hours, and these firefighters, these police officers, they have been to hundreds, if not thousands, of scenes in their career. And they told me they never thought they'd experience something like this again. Then, almost 8 years later, came the crash of Flight 3407 in Clarence Center, an event that many of them said brought them right back to this day.